Please join me in a warm welcome for Gareth Kitson.
Thanks, Elliot. So, firstly, I'd like to congratulate myself for not managing to spill anything on my white shirt. That was an absolutely lovely lunch. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you, Elliot, for that warm reception, and thank you all for your attendance today and coming out to see myself as well as networking with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to talk to you today about cybersecurity. So, one of the things, or a few of the things that Elliot spoke about was certainly around the skills, the Charitable Skills Foundation that's being started. That sounds like an absolutely outstanding initiative for Jersey to pick up. I would love to get involved in something like that personally myself. So I'll probably approach Elliot after this. And John, you spoke briefly about, if my clicker works, about how Jersey is kind of cut off and has its own fortification away from everyone because it's quite difficult to get to. Unfortunately, in the information age, this begins to become less of a fortification as we open up more of our systems, open up more of our information, and open up more of our businesses to international trade and trade outside of the country, because all of a sudden, those massive oceans and seas and channels that are difficult to get across by boat, or you have to fly across by plane, become just a click on a link, and suddenly you're transported halfway around the world. So I did a little bit of homework and found out that, because I didn't really know that much about Jersey, I didn't know that much about what actually goes on here. So I did a little bit of open source research, found out, your GDP is about 4.3 billion per year. That's massive. It's a quarter bigger than the UK average for each average citizen, which is just astronomical. It also means that, there's a lot of financial accounting services, a lot of legal services. There's a huge consultative workforce here as well. And what that means is there's a lot of cash really flowing around and bouncing around between businesses. That starts to make it really interesting for the people that are looking to target and monetize a way to make you frightened, a way to extract your hard-earned money and your business's hard-earned money without having to do too much work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about targeted attacks. So maybe those large businesses that have, threat actors do their homework, they do their research, they really pour in a lot of effort to figure out how the business works and actually turn around and pull big money out of businesses. We'll talk about automated attacks, where it's more about just a numbers game. So you spray out a certain amount of bad stuff, you'll compromise a certain amount of people, right? Because there's basic stats on how many people will click a link regardless of how fishy it looks. And then we'll talk about, how we can change our attitudes and awareness to cybersecurity and cyber awareness training. And then I'll give you a couple of free little tools that you can go and play with, and hopefully they'll actually increase your cybersecurity posture. So I'll start by telling you a really corny story. Once upon a time, there was a Dutch subsidiary CEO. She was approached and was told that the company that she worked for, the group CEO basically emailed her and said, hey, look, we've got this super secret acquisition. We need to keep it totally down low, because otherwise, if our competitors find out what we're doing, they're going to snatch this company out from underneath us. It's going to put us in an excellent space within the market if we do that. All I need is your help to pay this Dubai holding company, because we can't be seen internationally as the group purchasing this company. So she went ahead and made payments. The first payment was about £800,000. As soon as she made the payments, more requests for payment were made. She actually approached her finance director, who said, this looks like it's a bit strange, it's a bit out of the ordinary, but let's go ahead anyway and keep paying. Obviously our group director wants this to happen. So all in all, 4 payments were made, and just when they received confirmation that, hey, you know what, we've taken the final payment, we're about to initiate the deal and close the deal, the French arm of the business actually started calling up. So the French group headquarters called up and said, hey, why is your bank actually running so low? We're seeing, in your funds there should be several million more. Where has it gone? At this point, the bad guys kind of legged it. They left, and it cost the company somewhere in the region of £16.8 million over 4 payments. As you could probably understand, the Dutch CEO, she was immediately suspended. Her finance director was immediately suspended. And after being suspended, they were actually fired without ever being linked to being somehow involved with this other than being duped, right? They weren't in on the scam. We know who that business is. It's Parthay. And we know this because that finance director actually sued his employer for unfair dismissal and won. So Parthay is now paying him 9 months of back pay because they dismissed him. And in December, he actually won, but he shouldn't have been dismissed based on his actions in this hack or this attack. So if you think about the way that this might have gone down, this had to be somebody who knew processes about the business, knew the basic processes about the business, knew who the right people were to approach and in the right way. But a bit of a worse one, that was 16.8 million, right? In the grand scheme of things, this maybe wasn't the most sophisticated attack we've seen. There was another company, almost a carbon copy of this, happened to the Indian CEO. He was approached by what he thought was Mayor Tecnomont's upper-level executives and CEO to, again, purchase another company. All in all, £14 million of payments were made, but this particular attack actually went even deeper. The bad guys had had access to the internal network for a long time. They knew who the right people were in the right places. They knew who third-party Switzerland lawyers were. And they even staged, you might have thought with Parthay, if I get an email that says, hey, transfer all this money, I'm going to be suspicious of that, and I'm probably not going to go through with that. At Mayor Tecnomont, the bad guys even staged conference calls impersonating the upper-level execs and also Switzerland lawyers to make sure that they could get this across the line. The only reason that this was uncovered was that the Italian head CEO happened to be visiting in India, and the Indian CEO kind of took him aside in private and went, so how's that secret kind of download acquisition going? And the Italian CEO kind of went, what? So that conversation didn't go well. And unfortunately, the Indian CEO and his finance director, again, were suspended and fired and kind of pushed out of the companies. So these are really, really big numbers. If your company was to sustain a £14 million loss, would it end up in the corporate graveyard? What about if it was £120,000? What would it look like then? Kaspersky has done research and feels that 120,000 is actually the average for any hack or cyber attack that is successful in attacking any business, small, medium, large, or enterprise. £120,000 to repair the damage, to shore up your networks, to do emergency repairs and emergency infrastructure upgrades, hire in the right people to do all of the right work, £120,000. Now this makes a great business case if you can gather enough of this information to take to your business leaders and to take to your head of technology or your CEO or your board and actually begin to define what a risk looks like, what your cyber risk looks like, and what the cost to the business of not embracing new technologies, of embracing new ways of training and helping drive cyber awareness within your organization. We were just talking about highly targeted attacks. You might not be working for one of the biggest businesses in the world, right? Surely Parthay and Mayor Tecnomont are very, very large behemoth, enterprise businesses. But what if you're working for somebody smaller? The bad guys aren't necessarily going to do as much homework on you. But there are reasons, there are attacks going on every day. that are much more automated, that don't require a lot of input, that are just being, actually batted around on the internet, and as people get attacked and compromised, that then sprays out more compromise to all of their business partners. So one such piece of technology that we've been looking at over the last 12 months is something called Emotet. You might have heard it. You might have heard about it if you listen to any of the kind of the geek news. So Emotet was originally developed in Europe. We found that it originally attacked European customers and was kind of limited to the European geo. It was designed to just steal your banking details. That's all it did. As soon as it installed on your computer, which your antivirus couldn't detect, it would download some more bad stuff, would steal all your passwords, and it would then find out who you email, and it would go out and email all those people on behalf of you to say, hey, click this link or open this attachment, right? The people behind Emotet, Mealybug, found out that, hey, the software that we have is actually really, really good at just getting inside, just getting the user to click it and just getting the bad stuff installed, right? So what they've done is they've actually rented out all of this software and they've given it to more threat actors who are packaging their own stuff, like crypto lockers and remote access tools to be able to even look at exactly what you're doing on your PC at any given time. And it's really good at getting past those defenses. So in a two-day attack we witnessed last November, just about Emotet, we saw that 1,900 customers were attacked from 48 different industries across all 5 regions of our grid. So we saw all of these attacks everywhere all at once across a huge number of customers. So we're starting to get on a scale here that means that this is not somebody in their basement, writing all these emails and driving this attack. 48 industries doesn't really kind of begin to tell you who was actually targeted. You would think maybe that everybody has been targeted unilaterally, but we can see here that, accounting, professional services, management, consulting, finance, and legal were actually among the most commonly attacked. And that really drives home, how many of these businesses and industries Jersey really relies on to make sure that, everything here functions correctly. What did it look like? It was just a, run-of-the-mill email, probably from somebody maybe from somebody you don't know. Had just enough text in it to prompt the user to click the link. They weren't all about Thanksgiving. This particular one we zeroed in on Thanksgiving because that was the 2 days that we looked at this particular attack. We had PayPal invoices and industry invoices and things like that were being attached and referenced within the email. But they all had one thing in common. It was all just about getting you to click that link or open that document. Once you open the document, it looks like it's having some kind of error, tells you to enable editing, enable content, kind of gives you, really crisp instructions that look fairly professional, look like they could be, a genuine Office error. And as soon as you do that, it runs a macro, downloads the installer, and does all the bad stuff to your PC. All right, so once the guys are inside, let's have a look again at those numbers. So of those 1,900 customers that were attacked, we saw 13,000 of these attachments at our sandboxes and stopped them getting to customers. We saw 402 different hashes. Now, I don't expect everybody in the room to know what a hash is. It's just a way of identifying a specific piece of malware. It's how cheap antiviruses and the antivirus on your PC will likely work because it's easy to run and it doesn't take much resource. So we saw 402 new hashes. So it wasn't the same file just trying to come through all the time. They kept changing it. The file names that were associated with these was 2,700 file names. So they changed the file names constantly to try and trick people and get people to click. And then there were 5,083 unique sender addresses of these 13,000 pieces of malware. So 5,083 spammers, 5,083 people who had previously been infected that were now spamming out this content. from 3,750 different IP addresses, so all over the world. We saw most of the traffic actually came out of the US. So there was a huge bunch of compromised systems in the US. And we saw 4,700 different subject lines. So the different subject lines actually even outweighed the different attachment names. All of this just adds up to the fact that they were trying to evade technology. They were trying to get past those walls. They were trying to conquer the secure ML gateways that are designed to pull all of this stuff out, or your spam filters that are designed to stop any of this getting to your inbox. So if you're a small or medium business, maybe you're not going to get attacked by somebody who spends months actually profiling your business, trying to figure out how to get in there, trying to look at the different processes that you make, that you take within your business. It might just be a random email from somebody you never know that just happened to be infected. So it wasn't just back in November. This is actually the numbers out of our Jersey grid for last month. And it looks like this isn't working properly, but the Emotet downloader there in light blue at the top, still 4% of the traffic that we see coming in that is malicious is still new strains of that particular malware. Moving on from the technological controls that we can put in place and moving on from being able to just block everything by building tall walls, we need to begin to look at our business circle of trust, right? So who are the people that we're bringing on board? Maybe we're doing DBS checks, we're complying with FCA regulations, we're making sure that the right people are being employed. But then what do they do once they're within the business and I'm no longer able to, ongoingly, not able to continue to check up on those users. So unfortunately, Bob was a compromised user. We asked Vanson Bourne to survey 800 different companies across geos, so UK, US, France, Germany, Australia, basically a good portion of the world. And we found that 80% of those companies fessed up to being affected by a compromised user within the last 12 months. So in this case, Bob used the same password for his home email as he did for his work email, and he forwards a lot of his work email to his home address. Unfortunately, he got some spam in his home address, clicked the link, they got his password, all that kind of stuff, and then they were able to log on to his personal email. They were then able to see, hey, he forwards emails from his personal email to his work email, so now I know where his work is. How about I try log into Office 365? And there you go, he uses the same password. Basic awareness training can begin to help users to understand, I need to use different passwords, or businesses instituting two-factor as a minimum can also help protect against these particular compromised attacks. Alice is a careless user. Now, 88% of businesses said that they were affected by a data breach, including careless user. This is somebody who accidentally, forwards out too much information or forwards out just too much documentation or sends it to the wrong person. 31% of businesses told us their CEO sent out documentation that shouldn't have been received by the recipient. Documentation that was either compromising to the business or compromising to somebody who does business with that business that should never have received that information, that documentation. 31% of CEOs. I also see a large number of CEOs, and we were discussing this earlier, CEOs and directors and management who are on a board of several companies feel the need that they have to forward emails to their personal emails from their business email because it's the only way that they can really keep up with everything, right? That's a really bad way of doing business, and we kind of know that. But unfortunately, we don't feel like that we have the tools in place to make sure that we can protect against that or protect them when they move out there. If I forward my email to Gmail and my Gmail password gets compromised, my business has no way of telling that, has no way of knowing that. And all of those emails are mostly sent unencrypted over the internet. So anybody who can intercept that in the middle can actually read all of your emails. So do start to take I hope everybody starts to take a little bit more care about what they're sending out. Malicious users. Felicity, unfortunately, found out, she was on the bad end of a redundancy. She worked in finance, and she decided that, everybody should know about the massive bonuses that the director level staff are getting this time round for their latest headcount cut, right? So as she's going out the door, she attaches the proof sends it to everyone in her address list, sends it out to partners and businesses, sends it all in internally as well. Now the damage is done, the damage to the business reputation as well as to morale internally, just really cannot be measured in that kind of situation. Unfortunately, the business can take legal action against Felicity, but at that time, the horse has already bolted, the damage is done. Greg is an abusive user. Now, we weren't able to get stats back from Vance and Bourne that we trusted, so we didn't put anything up here. So an example of Greg being an abusive user is that he believes that a healthy dose of stick will help his team achieve their numbers. So frequently his emails to his team or team members are, just laden with profanities and calling out people, calling out individuals for missing their numbers and things like that. He believes that that'll get the best out of his team. Unfortunately, what it does is it sinks our investment in those people. They perform much, much lower because their morale is much lower, and they leave our business before we're able to really turn around our investment in that person. Okay, so being able to protect against an abusive user as well is quite important. Thinking about those compromised, malicious, and careless users, this is what our outbound malware looked like from the Jersey grid. So our customers in Jersey who may be infected some other way, have a careless user, have a compromised user, are sending out 49 pieces of malware in January to their business partners, to people they don't even know, spammer lists, that kind of thing. So this is kind of scary that even though we're able to protect them, we stopped all of this malware getting out, that the compromise is still happening from other areas, such as the web, people plugging in USB sticks that they shouldn't and things like that. Now, Ping Identity is an identity provider platform. They did some research to figure out what customers' changing behavior looks like so that they can help businesses understand why they need to institute two-factor and make things easier across the board for people trying to remember passwords, because Ping allows you to remember one password for all of them, right? So they found that 1 in 5 people that they surveyed were involved in a data breach. Of those 1 in 5, 1 in 3 were financially affected. So personally, they lost money because their data was breached. Maybe they weren't able to get a mortgage. Maybe they weren't able to do certain things. Of those users, 78% of them said that they would stop. Of the total users that were surveyed, not just the users that were affected, 78% said that they would stop doing business with an organization online following a data breach. 49% said that they would never consider signing up to an organization that has sustained a data breach in the past. So if most of your business is online, a lot of that makes that look pretty grim. Also, Vance and Bourne did some more research for a company named Gemalto and asked 10,500 people whether they would consider legal action following a data breach. So if their data was included in a compromised data breach, would they consider suing the company? 93% of people across all ages, I'm not just talking about millennials here that want to pick up the sword for any old reason, 93% of people across all ages said that they would consider legal action. So all this kind of adds up to the fact that, we're looking at massive costs if we are breached, just fixing it. We're looking at people voting with their feet and leaving our business and going to our competitors. We're looking at possible legal action from our consumers. Is it any wonder that 60% of small and medium businesses go out of business within 6 months after a hack? 60% of businesses. So I've all been pretty bleak so far. The weather's lovely outside. We should probably all go outside and drink some beers and things like that. Do things that Aussies do. And I hear that the table that I was on, there's a healthy amount of libations usually in Jersey, which certainly sounds good for us Aussies. So let's talk now a little bit about how we can fight, how we can begin to educate users in new and different ways than we have been previously. And then also just a couple of free tools for you to take away. Unfortunately, there was supposed to be a video there. Let me see if it'll play, if I click play. This is why you do sound checks. No. Okay. So there's a video there that just shows you a little bit about human error and why we should be really talking to our employees about trying to embrace the fact that human error does happen. People get stressed. People click the wrong thing. People don't think sometimes. But just trying to engineer into people that second to just take a pause, take a breath, and listen to your sound judgment on what you should do in any given situation. And that's how a lot of our training is based. So the way that we've been doing training for sort of the past, however long, 30 years in IT, has every time I've started with a new business, it's just a long document that says everything that I shouldn't do, everything I shouldn't click, I shouldn't sign in here, I should always use the VPN when I'm outside the office, and all these kinds of things. It's kind of a one-time thing, and it's a document that's so long I struggle to get through. Recently I bought a house, and I'm a bit of a weekend DIYer. So when I was ripping out the bathroom, it was really good. I know how to destroy things, so I can just kind of, break things off the wall and rip the shower and rip the bath out and things like that. But when it came time to, lay some underfloor heating, lay some tiles, put in a shower, all that kind of stuff, I didn't read documents to do that. I went to YouTube and I watched videos. And it took me months, and my wife hated it because it took months for her to get the bathroom back. But during that time, I just kept watching more videos, and I watched more videos, and I figured out how to get done what I needed to get done. So it wasn't all at once. I couldn't learn it all at once. It was just too much information to get in. So I used video, relevant, short and persistent, right? I didn't watch hour-long videos about how to tile a floor. Trailblazing organizations, and I was talking to one of the gentlemen on my table earlier about real-world testing and how businesses are now beginning to phish their own users. There was a story I heard reasonably recently that was how a business phished their users. They thought up this idea that it would be cool to send a email from HR, from the genuine HR email, that said, hey, if you want to opt out from all the phishing emails, click here. And people fell for it, of course. But it kind of demonstrates, this is what we do as IT people. We will create a test that's so hard, that is so hard to spot and so ridiculously convoluted that most users couldn't possibly distinguish it. And then we say, oh, our company is at massive risk because 80% of people clicked on the link, right? Real-world testing needs to move beyond that, because that really only tests somebody's knowledge. We need to really test someone's knowledge, awareness, and attitude towards cybersecurity. And that's the only way we're going to really change behavior, right? Because what we want to do is we want to change behavior. And once we begin to know about someone's awareness and attitude towards cybersecurity, we can begin to see what's under the waterline, right? So we can begin to actually look at, well, how do we actually assess the risk a given user presents to my business? A one-time phishing test that they might somehow click on because they were stressed. Janet was talking in their ear, or they were trying to have a conversation with Bob, and they just accidentally clicked the link over. Actually, they had intent to click this link, right? So what we do is we can begin to, add new metrics like, well, how did they feel about cybersecurity before they did the training? Because usually we only actually figure out what people care, how people care, and how people think about cybersecurity after we've done the training. And usually our training is so boring and laborious that by then their awareness and their attitude is really low because they've just ignored the training, or they've done as little as possible to pass whatever test you've conjured up, right? So what we can do is we can start to send them those monthly videos that are entertaining and short, and kind of give them a little giggle, and has a test afterwards that rates them against their peers at the end. And we could take that and we could say, well, how long did it take for them to actually click on that link? And how long on average does it take for them to click on that link? then we can begin to build a risk score around their attitude and how much they actually want to participate in cyber awareness training. We could take what they're looking at on the web. So their web activity, how many risky sites are they trying to go to, how many sites are getting blocked. Pull that into their risk score. There's a really kind of edgy thing that we're doing that we're trying to think of a way to do and trying to figure out how to get it right, is taking all of those phishing emails that would have been stopped and somehow changing the link to make it safe, but sending it on to the user anyway. Because then you're really actually figuring out, hey, they would have clicked on a phishing link. This isn't a phishing attack that IT have dreamt up the most convoluted way to trick people. This is a real phishing attack or a real malicious link, real malicious attachment that user really would have clicked on, right? But then you need to do that in the right positive manner and begin to tell people, hey, you just clicked on our little test. This would have been a real email, but we've made it safe for you, right? Make the user feel good, give them that endorphin hit, rather than making them feel bad and making them want to run away and hide. And then for those users that do make a mistake, design custom remediation and figure out exactly how we can go about making these users safe, because it's all about driving lower risk for the organization. If we can find out the organization's risk score by helping to score our users, not just our infrastructure, how many firewalls we've got in place, how many technical controls we have in place and all that kind of thing. If we can begin to risk score our users and feed that into our business processes, we'll be able to understand a lot more about our business. So, freebies. Have I been pawned? It's not about racy pictures that have been sent around. It's actually about have you been hacked? Or has your email and password been included in a hack? A fellow Australian, Troy Hunt, set this up. It's a completely free service. You can even leave your email there and they'll email you when they see something pop up in one of the darknet hacks, or when he purchases a new password database and things like that. And they'll tell you that you were included in that hack. Okay? It doesn't have any kind of idea of what your password currently is. So it only tells you if you were ever hacked. So I've been included in about 8 or 9 different hacks just from one email address. And that was like an Adobe hack from 2010, a LinkedIn hack from 2012, a couple of gaming services hacks and things like that. And it tells me that my email address and maybe part of my password or my entire password was hacked, was available for bad guys to use, but it doesn't tell me if I've changed it, right? 2 weeks ago, Google came up with a new add-in for the Chrome browser, okay? And this tells you, by checking the passwords that you're putting in, it actually tells you if you're currently on one of those lists with that password. Now, it doesn't send your password across the internet. Google doesn't have all your passwords all of a sudden. It works in a really technical, deep down, really cool way. I can talk to you about it offline if you want, but there'd be no point going into that kind of depth. Here, I just yammer on for the next 30 minutes about cool technical stuff. So what I'm trying to get across is there's a few tools there. Just changing your password after knowing that you've been attacked and being warned about changing your password is certainly a very, very good idea. So, your call to action. Consider pursuing your cyber essentials. So, these are a framework created by the National Centre for Cybersecurity. If you look at the States of Jersey Police, you look at the primary schools and the Financial Ombudsman, all of these guys have already been certified. There's actually a gentleman on my table today that helps businesses to certify, and it gives you and your business partners knowledge that they can look you up on a database to see that you're taking a minimum set of steps that the government recommends that all businesses take. So it can help people instill confidence in your business. Think of how comfortable you are with your current risk profile. Are there any technologies that you should be investing in? Are there any technologies that have maybe you've been doing business with for the last 5 years and you've just kept renewing it, and you've not really been looking at, what's the best in the market today? And then how could you modify your training to make it engaging for your users, to make them want to understand more, to understand why they shouldn't leave their laptop on the table while they just go to the bathroom for 5 seconds in the Costa. I probably shouldn't have said Costa because we've got Coopers helping us out with today's coffee. Yeah. As you can tell, I'm a bit nervous. They don't let us out of the cave very often, us security researchers. So you can get in touch with me. I'm really happy. My LinkedIn is Mimecast because nobody else decided to take that before I started at Mimecast, which was nice. But yeah, you can get in contact with me, and there's a couple of my colleagues here as well, James and Amy, down the back there. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you, Gareth. Informative, interesting speech, thank you. So, as usual, we have time for some Q&A. So, if I can see a hand, and if you there's a couple of roving microphones, so wait for the mic, who you are and where you're from, and ask Gareth your question. Flooded with questions. There's plenty out there. There's one, down here.
Hi, Ronnie, Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for your presentation, very informative. This looks to me a little bit like training might address our age group, which is probably quite broad and rude. But does it address the issue that I'm having with the people sub 25 that contact me on WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Messenger, Snapchat and Twitter? Because that often is the place these links are coming, so the awareness training stuff that I'm seeing doesn't include that. Do you think there's a need to evolve this into mobile apps and address a wider audience?
Yeah, so the awareness training is more broad than just email. It's looking at threats that might come from somebody just finding a USB stick in a park, right? So it's generalized cyber awareness training. But what you're talking about there with threats coming in from more than just email, we do see email as the number one threat vector. It's 92%, something crazy like that, of malware and attacks start with an email. But yeah, we're certainly seeing an uptick in LinkedIn links being malicious and WhatsApp links and things like that. I probably shouldn't talk too much about it, but there are controls that Mimecast are working on to begin to protect people against those kinds of things. But I don't think this is the right forum for me to talk too much about that. But yeah, there are other controls that are needed, not just obviously a secure email gateway.
Okay. Another hand. Come on,
I've beaten them all to sleep.
Not at all. Really, no questions? Go on, one. There we go.
That was really interesting and
Right.
thank you. That was really interesting and probably quite frightening for a lot of people in the room, which
Sorry.
is aside for good security talk. I wondered if we've seen such changes in the threat vectors over the last few years, and people get used to one set of threats and then there's something new around the corner. If you had to sort of put your house to it, what do you think is the sort of threats of the future that we should start thinking about now?
Threats of the future. I think one of the things that the last 5-10 years have really taught us is that data leaks and data dumps and data breaches are quite damaging to businesses. I think in the future, the more dangerous and certainly the most impactful attacks will come from data compromise instead of just downloading all your books and publishing online. Crooks will begin to very quietly live within your network, understand what data you have in there, and there was a really good case where a researcher put forward that you know, he was a farm boy. He sat down with his neighbour. His neighbour was telling him about his new tractor that tells him all about the soil composition. It's all internet connected, so he can go on his laptop and figure out how good his soil is working. Now, if you think about how the crop turnouts affect futures trading, if you can then begin to understand what the soil composition looks like, to understand what that looks like, then you can begin trading on the futures and understand, you know, there's going to be an issue with corn. What if you were to feed the wrong numbers to the farmer from his tractor? If you got in there and you compromised the data between the tractor and his computer, then you could see that the yields are going to be, you could make it sound like the yields are going to be huge. And then trade based on that, and in 6 months' time, you're looking in a very, very good position when the corn yields are much lower than expected. Yeah. Sorry, I just made it even scarier.
Okay, one more question? There is one? Okay.
Hi. What percentage of these attacks do you think are coming from state actors as opposed to criminal organisations?
As in the financially motivated attacks that we're seeing, I don't think we would be seeing that many of those types of attack. There's certainly evidence to indicate that there are significant state actors that are always trying to attack and influence primarily large businesses. I wouldn't expect to see a lot of state actors, you know, spraying out malware in the case of the Emotech campaign that we saw. That said, you know, I would expect a more surgical approach where it looks like it's just a basic spam attack, but you know, it's been packaged with specific targets in mind and things like that. So Mimecast don't particularly have any specific data right now about nation state actors and the percentage that we see from them. It's very difficult to attribute blame.
Okay, please join me in thanking Gareth Kitson. Thank you.